Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to deTour Design Dialogues, Stop the Gap 2020 creation in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Poland. This is Yipei, your host today from Swift Art, Taiwan. Today, we are inviting our curators and artists of the Stop Gap 2020 exhibition. Let me introduce our exhibition director, Carolina King. Co-curators, Agnieszka Mori. Co-curators, Natalia Mota. Hong Kong artist, Ernst Zhang. And the Polish painter, Mateusz Pieszczak to join us. Welcome. Today I'm very glad to have you join with. Before that, I would like to introduce myself a little bit. I'm an independent curator focusing on Southeast Asian contemporary art development and bring the different artsy voices to other dialogues. Before the talk matter of the live starts, I would like to address some numbers of COVID-19. Today, December 5th, there are a total of 65.4 million confirmed cases and 1.5 million days worldwide. There are 1.04 million confirmed cases in Poland, more than 6,700 confirmed cases in Hong Kong, and more than 600 confirmed cases in Taiwan. So during the past 2 weeks, the curve have been flying up. Some cities are lucky to have a regular offline events, while some cities are moving quickly into the lockdown model. Within the weeks, the perspectives of the end of the pandemic have changed utterly. With the 3 vaccines against the COVID-19 reporting the good results in final clinical trial, and we think at least one likely to be used before Christmas, but there are still a huge challenge ahead. So from the screen, as you may see, many residency projects have been cancelled in Taiwan and the Southeast Asia region. Artists are reshaping the energy towards online platform. For myself, Swift Art postponed the Rainforest project from August to January. The Conservation Institute we collaborated in Sumatra Island was worried about the coronavirus would affect the orangutans, while we have more than 90% of the same genes. So it may going to change the date again. And Zunyi, the girls from the left top of your screen, she's from Cambodia, was facing the failure of doing the residency project in Japan and Taiwan. Then in Taiwan, the fantasy theater starting to produce the play with the COVID-19 issues. And in Vietnam, the 3D mapping artist like Crazy Monkey didn't have the income for more than 4 months. And now is looking for the fundraising project to support what he loved to do in the project. So I think today's conversation is very important for all of us to discuss and share the lockdown experience for the people who working still in the art scene during the pandemic. And moreover, how could we connect, support, and sustain each other in between the good news and the vaccine result. In the beginning, first of all, I would like to invite Carolina to share the overall concept of the exhibition, Stop Gap 2020. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Yipei, for inviting us to participate in this discussion and for hosting the talk. Hashtag StopGap2020 is the first collaboration between Clip Art and ARTA. It has been co-presented by the Consulate of Republic of Poland in Hong Kong and supported by Polish Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. So before I begin, I would like to very sincerely thank our Polish Consulate as well as PMQ for your ongoing support. I think I will say for all of us, without you, it would be very difficult to make this exhibition such a success that it has been. So StopGap 2020 is featuring 11 established and emerging artists from Europe and Hong Kong. And it's really asking the questions of how artists from different parts of the world use their time in lockdown, in isolation, to express themselves and to produce their works in this very difficult time, and how pandemic impacted the creative process. And I think as patterns of our lives are being disrupted, very often values we uphold are being challenged. And for the first time, we find ourselves asking very difficult questions, and sometimes perhaps even difficult questions about our thought process and what we do. Perhaps it's the first time in our lives we have this opportunity to stop, or we were forced to stop and to think about what we do. And dare I even say, to be more sensitive to our surroundings. And I think artists, they found themselves in a very similar circumstances, and they started asking themselves very fundamental questions about their creations. You know, those can be the questions, you know, what does my art advocate? Am I doing it right? Can I do it differently? So it's really, really important questions for their creative process. And I think I can say it myself because I'm not an artist as such, but I think artists, they have this very unique way of reflecting our imagination and you know, capturing it in the design process, in creation process, and helping us understand what we are feeling right now as us being more sensitive to everything that's happening. And it's what's really apparent in our exhibition is that you know, art and design are truly universal, and we are really experiencing very similar emotions regardless of where we are. Is it Europe? Is it Asia? And it's somehow pandemic, you know, kind of unites us, and art and design can give us that cultural identity. So our intention when creating the concept for the Stopgap 2020 exhibition was to really celebrate the creative process that resulted from the pandemic and our experiences regardless of the place.
The exhibition really presents the diversity of the queerness between the Asia and the Europe. I would like to invite and ask Aga, and what's your observation when you discovered the happening in Poland?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I have the pleasure to be the co-curator of the exhibition, as well as one of the participating artists. First of all, I'm very happy that the exhibition could happen. And we had a great opening last week with many people visiting. It was just before the cases increased in Hong Kong. Yeah, we're lucky in that way. But as you know, in Poland, the lockdown has been there for a long time. And when I visited Poland in summer, in August, I had the chance to visit some studios of the artists connected to the biggest university of art in Poznań. And I was very impressed by the creativity. And I just knew that the works, they need to be shown here in Hong Kong in the International Art Hub. So in order to support the artists and also to introduce them to the local public, and also to build the bridges between the Hong Kong artists and the artists from Poland. So the selected artists from Poland, all of them have already lots of awards and achievements, but mostly they have created very new and very different works than before and took positive action during this difficult time. Moreover, just opposing them with the local artists has created new constellation on the art map, and that is something that we are most excited about. So, yeah, after a few months of preparations, here we are with the exhibition at PMQ S209, Stopgap 2020. So big thanks to all our supporters and partners, and please join us and visit the exhibition till 16th of December. Let me just briefly introduce the Polish artists taking part in this show. So, as you hear on the slide, we can see some photos from the opening. We had the Polish consul and Mr. Aleksander Dainda, and also Mr. William To, the director of PMQ, joining the opening, and we had many guests visiting us. I will just introduce very briefly the artists taking part in the show. This is the poster designer and illustrator and professor at the University of Arts in Poznań, Max Skorwider, who has created a new series of illustrations. He is missing traveling to Hong Kong and Asia. So he reflected on the iconic animated symbols and characters in a very humorous way and talks about important issues like tolerance or overloading and consumption. Michał Tatarkiewicz, a painter and graphic designer, he reflects to his near surrounding. His own small studio can be seen as a reflection in the monitor of his Macintosh, the only window to the world in a way. But we can also see a pen which gently invites us to the creativity. And Zuzanna Lenartowicz-Malher, a photographer and visual artist from Poland, she's fascinated by nature. She uses her time of the pandemic to study the technique of calligraphy, and her series of pencil drawings combined with calligraphy refer to the Victorian style of, and the 19th century botanical notes. She draws animals which are full of meanings, often opposite in different cultures, like, for example, the bat, who symbolize the very bad luck in Europe and also the good luck in Asia at the same time. So she tries to say that the animals are non-magical, and it's just us people who give them these supernatural powers. Then we have a Studio Ziben, a designer from Poland who works and lives in Berlin. And he uses elements of the prototypes of his furniture in his collages. He recycles and upcycles. He deconstructs and reconstructs, looking always for new meanings and values. There is one more artist with us, Mateusz Piestrak, who will tell more about his works very soon. And for me, I'm most happy that we could build the bridge and we can listen to the artist's intuition by this exhibition, what will come out of the pandemic times. Thank you.
Yeah, we are glad to know Polish artists are positive to overcome the situation during the pandemic times and creating such a different perspective. And how about the current situation in Hong Kong, Natalia?
Thank you so much for having me. I am so proud to co-curate this beautiful show. And very similar to Poland, many people in Hong Kong, including many artists, discovered this new normal of 2020, of quarantines, working much more in solitude, and of course the ban of travel. And this, of course, impacted the processes, the ideas which they had. However, when we work on the exhibition program, we wanted to find artists and show also a positive impact for creativity. And I was really amazed to see how many Hong Kong artists has developed completely new body of work and experiment with new processes and ideas. So definitely the artists which you can see on hashtag StopGap2020 show were really determined to win with the global pandemic and I thought they definitely win in point of the process. In a moment, I will introduce briefly the artists and how their processes and their reality change. However, first of all, following Aga's and Carolina's invitation, I would like to say, please come visit us. We are open until 16th of December in PMQ, and we would love to share stories behind each artist with you. So starting with a very good example of positive impact on creativity, I would like to mention about Aga Mori's new body of mixed media collages. During the summer, Aga had to go under quarantine when she was going back from Poland, and this time gave her more time to think about process, about different ideas, and her reflection on what lockdown is. And this brought her to this completely new body of work. Also, I need to mention that she's the bridge between Polish and Hong Kong creativity. as she was born and raised in Poland, but she is heavily inspired by Hong Kong, where she has lived since 2015. Another artists which I would like to mention about are Andreas von Buddenbrook and Francesco Liecci. And normally, every year, they are traveling a lot around the region, and they have beautiful series about Bali, about India, about Thailand. However, this year, of course, it was so hard to travel. So they focused about what they can see in Hong Kong, focus about not only the most known concrete jungle, but also the green side of Hong Kong. On the show, you can also see beautiful work, photography collages by Martin Rees, who for years has been interested in the relationship between people and the machines. The global pandemic forced us to go virtual, even more than before. And Martin has developed a series of collages reflecting the intensification of the pre-existing retreat of the human experience into the ambiguous of the virtual world. Last but not least, we are proud to present Sim Chan, a very innovative technique that integrates contemporary oil painting and science and technology. Years of tests about the relationship between colors and light enable him to create works that change spontaneously with ambient lighting and revealing the hidden side of the painting once the room is dark. And as many artists, he spent most of his time in his studio in Fotan area, where he was really inspired by cityscape and the local architecture. And his newest series of work, The Windows, showing the reflection of how we all see world right now, most of the time through our apartment windows. So to summarize, many artists decided to picture the new reality and the subjects which are touching the new states of affairs. And now I would like to give the voice to one more artist, Ernest Chang, who shared with us his beautiful project, new series of work, The Blink Dynasty.
Yeah, indeed. So
you.
when the confirmed cases suddenly increased in more than 100 per week last week in Hong Kong, the government took a quickly decision on restriction of the mass gathering in the public. So Ernest, to respond to your personal situation, could you share with us how you personally affected by the pandemic or the quarantine period? And please share us more about how you created your own artwork during this time.
Okay. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm really honored to be part of Stopgap 2020. And I just want to thank all the people here sitting with me for including me. And so I guess I'll start with some artworks that I made this year. So this year has been really different because I wasn't able to travel, as Natalia said, because of the restrictions and stuff, but I was able to get inspired mostly from the internet because that's the only window to the outside world right now, and mostly on Instagram. And I feel like ever since the beginning of this year, we've been kind of bombarded by online advertisements more and more because of the fact that we are all staying at home and going online and shopping more online. So I've gotten really inspired by all the Instagram ads and everything, and this obsession with luxury and fashion that I seem to see on Instagram. And since I'm also kind of obsessed with that, I wanted to make a series about it. And I guess this series also, the techniques that I've used are very influenced by this year because a lot of these works are not just painted on canvas, they're also like silk screened on plexiglass, and that's because plexiglass has been used most of this year as a protection for other people from COVID in general. And I thought that the transparency and the fact that you can see through it at the same time blocking something is very interesting for me. And the effects that it creates is very similar to the way that I see the world, because I have color blindness. I have red-green color blindness, and basically I just use these dots and filters that I have on top of these artworks. I'm not sure if you can see on the presentation right now because it's a bit small, but they are actually many multiple layers of different inks and silk screens. So basically, when you walk around it, the image kind of moves a little bit with you in parallax. And basically, like this year, I created this series in mind of the fact that not a lot of international travelers can come to Hong Kong or visit my shows. So I realized that I needed to create artworks that are more graphic and more easy to be recognized in a very small, very digital format. But the thing is, I think the challenge in doing that is that ultimately the real artwork needs to have the quality of technical skills as well. And so not only do I have to create something that is able to capture someone's attention while they're scrolling through Instagram, but at the same time, when they come and see it in real life, there is a quality to the artwork that you cannot get digitally. So therefore adding another dimension to it, I guess. And in general, so this series, you can see that a lot of the, this series is basically called Bling Dynasty, and it's going to come out next February. And I'm really excited about it because there's, as you see, this is embroidery, and I have other mediums as well, as in 3D sculptures and stone carving. So it really is using a lot of old Chinese techniques in order to make something new. And as you can see, the influence is very strong from a Western or kind of like cartoon art, or basically in this case, I'm not sure if you guys recognize that. That is the piranha flower from Mario, and it is like my staple childhood game, and I think for a lot of people as well. And I think we can all kind of connect to that because our adolescent or our childhood selves are basically made by these icons. And ultimately, I'm trying to mix something that is so childish and so immature with something that is as classical and as traditional as Chinese art. And I thought that testing the fusion of these two elements would be very fun for me this year. And so I decided to mix mostly Han and Tang Dynasty artworks with, like, for example, Star Wars. There's a new Mandalorian, which I love and I watch all the time, and it's Baby Yoda, and there's Snoopy's friend Lucy. So yeah, so this whole series is basically also about the clash between Western and Chinese culture because of the fact that now a lot of the consumer products are designed to just target Asian consumers, for example. For example, like a lot of brands would not be able to sell their products without putting their brands on it. And I thought that is a huge shift of culture in general, because I think it's, I guess it's just a new era for consumerism. And as China becomes is the largest economy in the planet right now, on our planet right now, and they kind of outmatch everyone else's spending habits, they ultimately are basically driving the design principles and the design processes of luxury houses. And for example, artists like myself who are heavily influenced by pop art and all these pop trends that I observe. So it's been really interesting trying to mix these ideas together. And here's a stone carving, which I was talking about. Yep. Yeah, so all of these will be shown next year in February in my gallery or near me. So stay tuned, please. Yeah. And I guess I can also talk about like some of the works I did before. I guess this series came from a series that I was doing last year, which was called Famous by Proxy. And it was an exploration of basically manga and classical Western art. And this year's Bling Dynasty was basically a continuation of that exploration of the mashing of cultures, and in a really pop, really eye-catching way. So as you can see, like most of this is from my last year's series, Famous by Proxy, and a lot of the artworks are taken from very iconic classical Western artworks that are basically staple artworks that have driven our entire human culture, like our entire human art history. For example, with Michelangelo and Raphael and all these masters, they created a standard of beauty that wasn't involving Asian culture or other cultures except the West. So I thought maybe instead of Western people being in these staple artworks, I can change and kind of alter the value of these pieces by using Asian characters in them to kind of, I guess, turn the context a little bit upside down. For example, this one is from Raphael, and it's a really famous painting, the Incredulity of Saint Peter, and he didn't believe Jesus was resurrected, and he had to poke a hole in him in order to confirm it. And I guess it's kind of the same story for me in a way with Dragon Ball Z, because Dragon Ball Z, he always dies and he always comes back by being wished for in a Dragon Ball wish or something. And you basically, it's kind of, I feel like all these stories are just being retold and retold in new ways. So I'm trying to create new values out of things that are already there. Yeah, and some of these are from 2 years ago, and as you can see, I'm very obsessed with pop culture, and I think my favorite thing in the world is Pokemon, so that's why this series was heavily inspired by that. This idea of collection and property in general, and how Pokemon maybe was very heavily influencing on the fact that now we like to collect all these things because for Pokemon, we basically, that's the goal of the game, is to collect all the Pokemon. So I guess I was trained from a very young age to want to collect art or anything. But yeah, so I'll just go through these last ones. They're a collaboration that I did with Blue House before, and I guess like it's very different, as you can see, because like I can actually, you know, like compared to now, a lot of the things have to be done digitally, and I can't go out and do and meet people to do new artwork. So this was very collaborative. So I guess like I couldn't have done this year. But yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Ernst. To reflect on your presentation, it reminds me that Animal Crossing was really popular during the past few months.
Yes.
And that many of the museums upload their artworks, and the artists try to meet each other online through the games.
Yeah.
And I also have talking with many artist friends in Shanghai. They mentioned about the fashion industry also changed a lot. And this year, many artists are start to discussing about the bootleg. I think it's become a new word of fashion, affecting the culture into the art industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so next I would like to invite Mother Wish to share about your experience in Poland, and how did you overcome to make the artworks during this period?
Yes, thank you for this question, and thanks for inviting me here to this talk. And above all, thank you for inviting me to the exhibition. The year 2020 has been definitely very strange and difficult, but despite all the problems and difficulties it brought, I think that I managed to develop some new things and to reevaluate or reconsider my position and practice a little bit. And even though there were many moments this year when I thought that making art or painting especially was absolutely unnecessary and I should be doing something more practical probably. So initially I thought that it would really be a gap year, as the title of the exhibition suggests. But now as I look back at it, I'm surprised that I managed to take part in a few artistic events, such as this talk or this exhibition. Some of them were planned last year and they had to be rescheduled, or their form evolved, which made me do things that were new to me, such as making presentations or writing essays about paintings rather than showing them physically in the gallery. Or I was filming myself during lockdown in my studio to present some online content when the exhibitions were closed. And in a way, I think that those restrictions and new rules, they forced me to be more creative and spontaneous in reacting to those changing conditions. And it actually made me learn or try some new things. But let me tell you briefly what the situation in Poland looks like. It's been obviously very difficult this year, but there are several reasons for that. Not only the pandemic. That was, of course, the first big problem of 2020. But in addition to that, we've been having a deep political and social crisis, which escalated after spring presidential election, I suppose. And we are now struggling with the government that is completely unable to manage the situation in the country. And instead it developed an absurd and hateful propaganda to cover up the tragically poor condition of the healthcare system, lack of economic support for citizens and artists, of course, and other bad decisions. So this year we had, and actually we are still having many protests, and some of them, despite the restrictions, they gathered tens of thousands of people. And in fact, they were the biggest protests that I have ever experienced in my life. So yes, I know that I'm supposed to be talking about art now, but and I will soon come to this topic. But as you can see, I cannot simply put aside everything that is happening around me now and lock myself in my studio and keep on working. Actually, I tried that in the very beginning of the pandemic because I really didn't have to change anything in my lifestyle during lockdown. And for a while, I even felt quite comfortable thinking that everything slowed down or stopped. And for a moment, I felt that I didn't have to worry about keeping up with the art world or worry about deadlines. And for sure, at the beginning of the year, I felt that this usual pressure was gone. But soon I realized that that comfort was an illusion. And I started to experience a new kind of stress. I became worried and terrified by the local and global situation. And it seemed ridiculous, really, that I was spending this time in my studio making paintings while the world was burning and people around were struggling to survive or simply dying. And it also didn't seem right to me to make any use of that situation artistically. But as I just saw in Ernest's presentation, when you are clever about it, you can do some great things. But
Thank you.
I do not work in that style.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, I felt that I couldn't focus on my previous or normal projects because they seemed totally irrelevant to the situation around. So both options seemed wrong, but I also couldn't stop creating something on a daily basis because I believe that making art keeps me sane, really. And I know that these are big words, probably, but I truly believe in that. So I realized that in all that madness, I also had to take care of myself. And I decided to use art as a way of escape, really, because I simply got overwhelmed with everything that was happening around. So not knowing what I should be painting, I looked back at some paintings that I created shortly before the pandemic. They were already quite dramatic or emotional, but my original idea behind them was rather related to some unknown distant future or some general anxiety caused by my personal worries about things like climate crisis or possible future catastrophes. And I wanted to express some kind of personal fear about the future, which then seemed surreal in a way. But when I looked at these paintings in the new context, I discovered that they became unexpectedly actual or relevant or related to the current situation. For instance, when I was painting this burning armchair, I was probably thinking about my own future, about becoming old one day in the age of the climate catastrophe. But now, as I know that in the pandemic, the people that are in most danger are seniors. And I imagine them being locked down in homes, most probably lonely and scared. I see this painting as a surprising illustration of that state. And I see a similar coincidence here. I've been painting different birdhouses for a while because for me they are just an interesting poetic objects. But during the lockdown, they appeared to me as a bit scary for the first time. And I started seeing them as some kind of sign of an unexpected oppression within the space that initially felt safe. So I think that they are quite ambiguous in that way in this context. So yeah, as I said, I realized that there was an interesting potential in following that way of painting because I didn't want to be too literal in depicting the current state, but I believe that following that intuitive, poetic path may also occasionally bring some relevant metaphors that might be actual. And I also felt that these new paintings had to be smaller than my usual works. In fact, I've never painted such small pictures before. They almost feel like sketches, which gives me the feeling that I don't have to worry too much about perfecting them as I usually do. And working on them seems a lot easier. And I think that these formats also correspond well with the current circumstances, with that condition when I am not really able to make any big plans, or I shouldn't be worrying about making big impression or formulate some big statements. I hope there will be time for it in the future, but I guess that now I only want to focus on details, on minimal narratives, and to play with them in this reduced personal space. Speaking of personal space, as a starting point for most of these paintings, I usually choose random motifs that I find at hand, because I really don't want to make any big research now or go too far in my imagination. So I pick everyday objects from my studio and I transfer them onto canvas in a strange technique. So at first they look a bit like prints. Then I look at them and I try to find some potential associations, some new meanings. So I reshape them, I use stencils, and I add color, and all that resembles a little bit the technique of collage. And in this process, I believe that those simple motifs, they start to evolve into some other forms, and some new metaphorical meanings start to emerge from them. Yes, here, for example, in this painting, I started it with a bunch of disposable gloves that I had in my studio, and later I multiplied them, I layered them, so the composition became complicated, and the whole picture got a bit crowded and ambiguous, because I can't really decide when I look at it if those hands are friendly to each other, or maybe they fight, or maybe they deliver something from one to another. So I also gave this painting an ambiguous title as well. It's titled "We'll Catch Each Other." So I think it can be interpreted and perceived in different ways. And maybe it's also relevant to the current social communication difficulties in a way. This one is also very simple when you first look at it. It's just a window with a curtain, but I wanted to build it in a way that makes a viewer unable to decide what's inside and what's outside. And I like the way in which these spaces are reversed or uncertain, which also seems a bit relevant, right? So it's a rather obvious metaphor, I suppose, but with a little visual twist. This one is called Anybody, and for me, it's basically like a mock-up for a random ID photograph, which is a funny paradox when you think about it. The story behind it is that one day I found a beautiful paper net in some package that I got. So I used it many times to get that structure, and it turned out to be a great material to build different shapes or forms that seem, at the same time, they seem organic, because they resemble some kind of empty shells or some organic material. But at the same time, they remind me of some 3D virtual renders of different things. So I play with that mix of styles. And this painting is also on the display at the exhibition in PMQ now. As well as this one, which is a bit different, because it was based on an old photograph that I found. But maybe I will not go into details about this one because I'm not sure how much time I have. I just say that I like the mix of emotions and styles here, and I think it's scary and comical at the same time. Yeah. This is the last one that is on the exhibition, but I don't have time to talk about it too much. So let's just say that if you want to find out what's happening here, I invite you to the exhibition, and I think that you should ask the curator. and she will surely tell you the whole story, which actually brings me to the conclusion, because a few days ago, one of the curators of that show, I believe that was probably Agnieszka or maybe Carolina, told me that she had a long discussion with some visitors in front of my paintings, and that they tried to interpret them and got very engaged, which made me realize that this thing that I do, I mean painting, is still needed and appreciated in these strange times. And I realized that it is important to preserve some kind of free imagination or poetry or beauty in these difficult times, and that it should be my job now, even if it sounds a bit romantic. So all that makes me think that probably I am not the only one who needs this kind of imaginary escape from reality from time to time. And I think that's a valuable discovery. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mateusz. I really hope I can see your work personally at PAQ as well. I received some questions from the audience. They would like to ask Carolina, how do you see the relationship of the artist and the audience during this pandemic? I think Mateusz have explained some experience from that you mentioned, but I would like to hear more from your telling.
Between the artist and audience, I think definitely it helped. It triggered a lot of emotions in audience. Sometimes when the audience comes in, they're not really sure what to expect. And perhaps when we are talking to the audience about, majority of these works that have been created in 2020, they almost expect the exhibition to be somehow negative or pessimistic or sad. But it's not always the case, because I think a lot of this works is talking about hope and about the positives. And what I was saying before about we try to really show how we celebrate creativity that resulted from the pandemic and the creative process that was born out of this, working in isolation. And perhaps this creative process was very different. So I think it triggered a lot of kind of emotions and sometimes made our audience to stop and think deeper about what they are seeing in front of them. So it was really interesting to have a lot of wonderful conversations, and definitely was very, very, very exciting part of the exhibiting those works.
And then the question to Aga and Natalia, how do you think the coronavirus has pushed the entire world into the digitalization? How do you think of this art community adapting at the moment?
It's a very interesting question indeed. Yes, I think we all have to face it, and we all have to be kind of appreciate that we have all this new media that help us to express ourselves and communicate. Even tonight's talk, we can have the artists from Poland being almost near us. We just feel the presence, and Yipei from Taiwan. So this is kind of that we have to open ourselves for that and use these technologies. And I think, other hand, that the artists go back into the manual things. So as we could hear today, like Ernest said, he started to be very curious about the materials he uses. So like the plexi that he covered his paintings. Is the material that we use to protect ourselves. Like Mateusz also using the near object from the courier who delivered the package, and he starts to look into the details. So I think it's going in the both direction, that we have all these new technologies helping us, but we also more sensitive to the handcraft in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I definitely living in 21st century, I mean, the world is so small, we can connect spontaneously with Europe, with United States, and this really bring us to the new level, right? So even during the pandemic, we can always be connected. But on the other hand, of course, the virtual world also is very ambiguous. So even one of our artists, Martin Rees, he has the entire series about the question, what is actually real and what is mirage? This is also a very interesting take of what's going on. And of course, now as we are more and more virtual and we are mostly doing shopping online, we are seeing art online, we have so many viewing rooms online. It can be sometimes a mirage of what the real look like. And that's why we are also very happy that we have also the offline present. We are here in PMQ and we can talk with our guests face to face, not only in camera and show them this beautiful art, because obviously seeing art on your computer screen, it's good, it's great, but seeing it live, it's a totally different level.
Thank you. And question to Ernest, as you one of the participant or artists at the PMQ, how do you handle the feelings on site with the audience and the virtual interaction? Like now we have the conversation together.
Yeah. Well, I really like hearing what people think about my art. I guess like because I'm a pop artist, and most of the time I use pop motifs to connect with people, and I want to see, in general, what people and how they react to these pop motifs that I use. But in general, like I really appreciate being able to hear like what Matosh is saying about using found objects and just seeing the textures that he has created. In such a detailed way. Like I guess before the lockdown we weren't able, well, I guess not that we weren't able, I guess we weren't directed to look inward and closer to what we have. And I guess in my way it was because I'm an addict to like fashion and technology, so my way was looking deeper into those worlds. But I guess like in Poland, for example, for Matosh, he's looking at different things. So that's really important for me to hear.
Thank you. And the question to Madawush, I think many of the artists are facing the same situation like you, to rethink or to reflect on their internal feelings and to reflect on the alternate surrounding conditions worldwide. Do you have any suggestion to other artists that when you doing or when you pay more attention in the domestic situation, how to connect the world in the artistic way that you think in the proper postures?
So you're asking me how to connect the world with art?
Yes.
So the plan is... No, I'm joking. I don't really know what to... With which part to start of this question. Yeah, I think that it is always valuable to also look at yourself and look into yourself, even if you're an activist artist that is engaged in global things. You always need to take this part to be aware of your own perspective, and for some people it can be just a great exercise to take a moment sometimes to just look at as little things as possible, as small things as possible, and to focus on a very small detail and being present, and then go back to the bigger things with that fresh view. For some artists, for sure, it can almost feel like a therapy, which is quite dangerous in my opinion, because art should not be totally used instead of really taking care of your mental health. It can be helpful. Yeah, I think that changing perspective and looking as well as usual, looking outside and inside yourself and balancing those things can be helpful.
Thank you. Is there more question from the audience? Or if you have more question, I think due to the time limit, you can directly ask the question to curators on site, or you can pass the message to the PNQ. Yes, we know today's conversation is so lovely, and we know traveling, cross-cultural exchange, meeting each other from our foreign friends nowadays are still a little bit hard and difficult to back to the way it was. So we hope this talk could create a new platform to connect our like we doing now. And together we can still share our experience, cross the borders, learn from each other, and carry on with each other. Yep. So thank you for your time, and let's stay tuned with the next sessions with the deTour's virtual exhibition and festival to explore more creative celebration. Thank you.